And I know what failure feels like. As much as we love to win, we fail so much more times than we win. And ultimately, to have the mindset centered around that, I know that I'm still here. I know I have another opportunity. I have the choice now to try it again and get better at this thing that I once failed at. It allows me to know that the growth, the ability to continue to grow is still there.
Welcome to Limitless Minds, the podcast where curiosity meets greatness. Each week, co-hosts DJ Eitzen and Harry Wilson sit down with some of the most exceptional individuals across sports, business, and beyond. From world-class athletes and peak performance coaches to visionary CEOs, entrepreneurs, and influential authors, they dive deep into the stories and strategies that drive extraordinary success. If you're ready to discover what it takes to be truly limitless and push beyond your own limits, you're in the right place.
On this episode of Limitless Minds, we have David Freeman, a well-respected fitness and mindset coach who serves as the Senior Director of Alpha at Lifetime Fitness, a role in which he oversees the Alpha training program, a high-intensity group training experience, in which he has a passion for health and wellness, which has helped him guide clients towards peak performance, both physically and mentally. In addition to his leadership at Lifetime Fitness, he's a co-host of the Lifetime Talks podcast, where he discusses various aspects of health, fitness, personal development, and lifestyle, often drawing from his own experiences and insights. As a coach for Limitless Minds, David Freeman leverages his expertise in fitness and mindset to inspire individuals and teams to unlock their full potential. He's known for his high energy, motivational style. He combines mental resilience and physical fitness to help people lead more balanced and empowered lives. Enjoy. All right. Today we have my man, David Freeman, Limitless Minds coach, leader in the fitness industry. And I use the word leader in particular, not just because he's at the top of his game, but, I've known Free for half of my life now, and I've always known him as a leader, and just excited to have him on. Actually, the cool thing is, Free, I don't know if you remember, you're a return guest technically, because we had you on the OG version of this, Room Tilters, which kind of relaunched when we relaunched this podcast and rebranded, and so some that may have made me familiar with you based on previously being on, where we were able to kind of hear your story from college football to the fitness industry, and actually that bridge from college football to professional over in Europe and so on and so forth. But a lot's happened since pre-COVID, and we thought we'd get the updates. I know there's a lot going on in your world. You've joined the Limitless Minds kind of collective of best and brightest mental fitness and performance coaches, and so so much has happened. Families gotten, the kiddos gotten older, all this stuff, right? So we wanted to catch up, talk a little bit about mental fitness and the fitness game, leadership and your philosophy around it. We'll talk a little bit about servant leadership, and just kind of dig in a little bit on, coaching and also the mindset in the fitness space and nutrition and so on and so forth. 'Cause I know you're an expert in that area. So anyway, so we're excited to have you back on, man. How you been?
I've been good, man. I got my shovel ready. I'm ready to dig in with y'all. Fam Bam is doing well. I got a chance to go to my daughter's school with my wife, do a little Friendsgiving there with her and her team. Got a big race tomorrow, a little high rocks action. First time, I think, competing in almost 5 or so years. I compete every day, but I'm talking about in a formal competition.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm doing a little partner race with my boy, so I can check that off the list.
Wait, rap to me about what this race is for those that don't know.
Oh, the high rocks. Yeah, the high rocks. I mean, it's for the hybrid athlete, and what you have is 0.62 meters. I said 0.62. 0.62 of a mile is what you're covering. A little over 800 meters for those that don't want to do quick math there. And what you have is little stations in between every 800 plus meters. So I'll run 0.62, got to do 1,000 meter ski erg, 0.62, 1,000 meter row, 0.62 sled push, so on and so forth. And it's 8 events that you obviously go through in that space. And then it's all said and done. Usually it takes people a little hour plus. I would say less than 90 minutes for most. But it's a fun one. It's just testing more of my mental fortitude and just seeing how my body, what it can do at the age of 40 plus.
Yeah. Yeah. Who's your partner?
My boy Bryce. So he's actually the way it works too, from an age standpoint, they end up taking the ages and taking the median. So I actually got to run with a 35 to 39. I'm 40, but I gotta run. I call them the young cats at this point. But I'm excited about it, man.
Love
That's
it,
cool.
man. I love
it.
it.
How do you prepare for something like that?
Man, it's like what you do any and every day for life. How do you prepare for life, right? When you think about the movements, all the movements are what I would say functional. Just and I might be biased because I live in the space of health and fitness, but when we say hybrid, it's best of both worlds. You got to have your strength. You also got to have your conditioning element, and you got the runs, you got the weighted pieces, and you got the relative strength in there. So the way I would say prepare for it is obviously first thing first, do the homework, understand what events you're going to have to compete in that space, each station. And then just like with anything, start to get as many reps as possible, ask as many questions as possible. But like I said, it's the mental piece for me. I just love the grit of what I'm about to put my body through, seeing the tolerance that still exists within that. And there's going to be a point. It's going to be that point in the race where you're going to want to stop. And everybody knows it's that breakdown or breakthrough moment. And I live for those moments just because I already know the answer, right? We're going to keep going. So that's how I would explain to get prepared for it. Mind right, body right, man.
Love it, man. I love it.
That's
DJ,
awesome.
You trying to be my partner next time, dude? You know?
Yeah, I'll get our age down.
Yeah,
so, you
sure.
know, between your age and my age, we'd be what, about 25, 35?
20. Yeah. Well, there's one. There was supposed to be one rule on this episode, no lying, but
no lying.
But we broke it. it.
Right out the back.
Right out the gates, man.
Right out the gate. So listen, Free, Lifetime Fitness, you've been there for a minute, and you know, every time I look up, you're accelerating the path, you know, and how you're impacting people, you know, the members and you know, the stakeholders, if you will, but you know, and also kind of across the board internally. What's the current role and the responsibility at Lifetime? If it's just one, I think you're doing multiple things. Tell us a little bit about the update.
Wear a few different hats, man. Globally, I just call it being a servant leader, and I know you alluded to that a little earlier. But I'm a senior director for Alpha, which is our performance brand. A lot of the cross training of weightlifting and metabolic conditioning. So I'll dive into that a little bit more. I'm also our co-chair for our inclusion council with the principles of just making sure that we call it as far as having that diversity bonus, right? And just being able to have just an array of different individuals of representation that help elevate everybody that's sitting at the table. So co-chair of our inclusion council. You actually have been featured on the next piece I'm about to say. I'm a co-host for our Lifetime podcast. So those are the high level items, but ultimately I love coaching. I love pouring into people. I love elevating and helping them find their light. So that's my core of all things.
You know, it's fun. It's fun also seeing you active on social media. You know, obviously we know social media can be, you know, it can be something that's helpful, you know, and a great platform. It could also be, you work against you, right? And depending on how it's being leveraged, but I think you use it in a really awesome way. It's fun to follow, fun to repost. I see how you engage with people that are coming into the, you know, into change their lives, I'll call it daily. And so I respect that. So I've been kind of watching. And, you know, you work with people from all walks of life, right? And all stages of their fitness journey and health journey. And I've kind of noticed that you kind of give them a stage to kind of like give a testimony, you know what I mean? To share success stories, et cetera. You know, how, and a lot of it always seems to kind of distill down into some sort of mental fitness component, right? On like their path from a physical fitness component. How would you kind of correlate, you know, mindset and mental resilience in one's fitness journey?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, when you start to boil it down to mindset and understanding that ultimately all the things we do start from the choices that we make, and we mentally have to make that choice. So all these individuals, all these different walks of life, fitness levels that I come in contact with, they all make the choice to show up. So, I mean, that's one of the most important things to do is being able to show up. From that, they're going to be on a journey, and providing that platform to allow them to share their journey makes it relatable. When you hear, you know, myself talking, or maybe if y'all are talking, people are looking at, oh man, they're already there. They didn't have any struggle. And granted, we have our stories, but they look at it from a different lens. When you now have the individuals that are going through the grind and they're now able to create this space, safe space of this is the struggles I went through. These are the mental things that I've gone through, but I'm still here and I'm still showing up. And it's because of, they point to everybody in the room there as this community that keeps me coming back. It's this contagious energy that I'm connected to. And ultimately, as a byproduct, I'm healthier, I'm happier, and I love moving my body in space. So to answer the question as far as how to draw that parallel, when I said it earlier, mind right, body right, the way you think dictates the way you act, which yields the results that you get. So we take that mindset piece and we hone in on it. Yeah. And I don't blindside them. I end up saying, hey, I want to share the mic, shine the light with you next week. Are you open for it?
Yeah.
And some of them might be a little, I'm not good at public speaking. I'm not looking at you to be the next Tony Robbins or anything like that. I just need you to share your story.
Yeah.
And the nerves, you can probably hear it a little bit in their voice, but then all of a sudden it's a sense of calm comes over them and they just let it out. And so many people reach out to them and saying, wow, I never knew that. I'm so glad you shared that with me. And it motivates others to now get up and get going. So it's powerful, man. It's powerful.
Yeah. Well, you realize that like in that environment with that community and that family that they've built, it's not really, you can think of it as public speaking,
right?
But when you have these relationships, it's no different than just having a big dinner table that you're at. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think once you realize that like you're in friendly confines, you know what I mean? Then it's just about, communicating just like any other time, right? And so I think people kind of get intimidated by trying to share their story because, maybe they're a little self-conscious about how people, might receive it. But the reality is that in the community that you built and that they're in, it's a friendly one, I love it.
Free, you mentioned show up, and I think that's like, and you kind of just threw that in there. That's a big part of it. It's just it's, you can't fake showing up. AI can't show up, right? You know what I mean? Like it's something that I think is becoming more and more valuable. I too was at my kid's school today. I showed up to the turkey trot, right? I couldn't have an assistant or an app show up for that. How do you, when times get, you also mentioned when you have it in your mind, like, hey, my mind's telling me or my body's telling me I should give up. How do you show up and then and do that consistently? And then how do you not give up?
Yeah. So resilience and tolerance came at reps. I failed so many times in this space of life. And what came of that was experience. And I learned from those experiences. And I know what failure feels like. As much as we love to win, we fail so much more times than we win. And ultimately, to have the mindset centered around that, I know that I'm still here. I know I have another opportunity. I have the choice now to try it again and get better at this thing that I once failed at. And ultimately, when those moments come, being that I've had the reps and I've had the experience is always going to be your best teacher. It allows me to know that the growth, the ability to continue to grow is still there. Mm-hmm. And that's the beautiful thing about life is you're forever evolving in the space of life. So when you fail, learn from that experience and understand that you get to move forward to have another opportunity. So that's how I would answer that is when I'm mentally challenged, when I know that failure could be on the other side of that door, it's still that the mindset of what if I continue to do it? What could happen if I don't stop right here? Or even if I do fail? Mm-hmm. Great. I now have this experience that I can learn from and continue to move forward.
It's funny, like when I've been really like my fitness journey is kind of right now currently is I'm really working on like strength training, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And where previously I was doing a lot of cardio and my body's kind of changed just since I kind of hit some goals, and now I'm really working on strength training. And like every day I'm really trying to challenge myself with like time under tension.
Yeah.
Time under tension, right? Just to build muscle, right? Time under tension and work towards, work to failure, right? I'm sure maybe that's some stuff you teach for certain people just in certain workouts, like time under tension. Now that applies to our every day. You know what I mean? Like how can I find myself like constantly kind of in this time under tension so I can strengthen that muscle, right? That resilience muscle, right? The more tension and all of a sudden, failure is just a little bit further, right? And I've gone a little bit further, right? And so I think that, these principles are really cool. And the reason why I brought that up is because, when I work out, I go to a group session, I have a coach, and that's the same reason why I come back is the community and the coaching, right? Because the best coaches that kind of lead me with my workouts, they're not just helping me like work through some sort of workout template. They're the ones that are like giving me these little nuggets, these little messages. I'm like, where do they get that from? So like I was wondering, like, because you're giving a lot of gospel, if you will, from a mental fitness perspective when you're training. Where are you getting this stuff from? Like, where are you pulling this from? How are you prepping to make sure that you're delivering on that stuff, where it's not just coming to get a workout, you're coming to get a message?
Well, a lot of my consumption is you just said it comes from the gospel, man. So I'm grounded a lot within the word. That's how I wake up. That's how I start my day. Grateful in the sense of gratitude and appreciation. I ask to be used in a way so when people see me, that they see the Lord and being the light. So when I get my sermon notes, I'm not the person who just goes and hears it only on a Saturday or Sunday, and then all of a sudden that's the only day that I apply it. It's the constant practice of bringing this light to the world. So I take bits and pieces, and sometimes some certain things come to me, right? And that now I have the opportunity to share it with others. But I mean, ultimately, that's my source right there, man.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah,
I love that too. Like where you're saying it doesn't stop when you hear the message, right? Like it's something that you are pulling through and trying to find ways intentionally to pull it through your life. When something doesn't go your way and things aren't going as planned and you've failed, unpack that. How do you navigate through that? Like, what does that look like for D Free?
Well, I kind of reframe it and then go back to the beginning of like, okay, let me look at this process and understand, where did it start to go south, if you will? When did it start to fall apart? And then you got to understand, we talked about community earlier. We can't work as individuals. So how did this process, where did the communication drop off? Where was the ball dropped? And going into address that is how I start to unpack that, because ultimately when we're working in this space, we tend to put all the pressure on ourselves of, this is how I felt. And as human nature, we are meant to be connected to individuals, and we are looked at and looked upon to, whether we are the source sometimes, but we also look to the resources out there to help support us in this space. You can't do it all by yourself. So in those times that we stumble upon failure, it is this reevaluating the situation, reassessing and understanding how to approach it the second time around. Everybody who's listening right now, you can relate this to riding a bike. It's no different. When you're learning how to ride that bike or teaching your child how to ride that bike, ultimately they're going to fall off it. They got to figure out the balance. They got to understand how to steer. They got to understand how to pedal, do all these things at the same time. But ultimately, continuing that process and understanding what didn't work that time and how you now can make the adjustment second time around. So going through it, reassessing it, applying the knowledge that you learned from what you just failed at, and get better each time.
Yeah. I mean, what you're describing is neutral thinking, I mean, talk about that a lot on this podcast with different guests, and you know it well because you're a Limitless Minds coach. I mean, that's what neutral thinking is, like assessing the circumstance, what may be a negative circumstance, right? Assessing it without judgment, diagnosing it like you're a doctor, right? Like diagnosing, okay, here's what this could possibly be, maybe eliminating certain reasons why you have this illness or this failure or whatever it might be, right? And then with that knowledge, developing a set of solutions or a solution so you can move forward that hopefully has maybe some educated precedent that's been set that you can trust, and then go follow the process and focus on the behaviors, not necessarily the result, right? And you can do that without judgment, without having to worry about about it being toxic, positive, right? And then if we win, like your shirt says, you know what I mean, like we can celebrate that, right? And then move on. So I mean, I love that, and that's neutral thinking is a fantastic tool. You already mentioned gratitude. What are some other tools that you use in your everyday to share with the audience?
I mean, like I shared with you both earlier, I use past experiences to make myself more relatable
Mm-hmm.
because once again, people put us on this pedestal based off of their experience with us.
Yeah.
And they have this expectation of, wow, you just can do it all. So I think going back to the superpower of being vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
and showing them that I too, and we are human and we make mistakes and we don't always get it right. So I use the tool of what most probably won't do, vulnerability and showing failure and showing these areas of shortcomings for them to understand that, oh, you go through this too. I think that's dope, and I think it's underutilized a lot in this space because we talked about social media earlier. We post what we want the world to see,
Yeah.
and that can be that microcosm of I'm always winning when that's
Yeah.
not the case,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we tend to share what we want the world to see when it comes to those short posts. And the reality is people relate and associate, I don't want to say just a failure, but just relatability of what they might be going through so
Mm-hmm.
they know that they're not in it alone.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
How do you like when you're working with your clients, and I mean I'm guessing that they open up to you about some of their personal stuff, personal struggles.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you listen and keep an ear of, you know, that you're listening and being attentive versus letting them drain your energy? Like, how do you balance those two things?
That's a great question. That's a great question. Um, I listen to literally just take it all in. If they come to me and ask for a solution,
Hmm.
what I usually do, I just take it all in. I said, "Tell me more. Go a little bit deeper." And what they start to do is when they hear their self talk and they start to realize, like, "Oh, wait, I didn't realize I was doing that," or they start to stumble upon the solution. And the dope
Mm,
part is they're looking for you to create the solution and give them the answer, and I'm always reframing it and saying, well, what would you do differently?
Yeah.
How would you go about that if you now knew what you just shared? Like, and they literally come up with their own solution.
right.
And I think sometimes when you're sitting in that chair of a coach or a fitness professional or a mindset leader, whatever it might be, at this position of what we will call like power, the reality is the true power is the person who is conveying a message to you and you literally empower them to come up with the
Right.
solution.
Mm-hmm.
That's the superpower already exists within the individual.
Mm,
Yeah.
And to your point, as far as draining, sometimes they want you just to continue to give you the want the
yeah.
answer from you, and you got to just keep challenging them. You got to
Yeah.
just keep challenging them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this brings up the point that I know we were going to talk about because you and I have been talking about this for years on the side
Mm.
about servant leadership, right?
Yeah.
And servant
Yeah.
leadership, it's something that a lot of us have heard about, right? Servant
Mm.
leadership, and what kind of leader? I'm a servant leader. I'm a servant leader. But not, I think people say that sometimes and don't even know exactly what they mean by that or have their own real kind of like philosophy or framework around it. But
Mm-hmm.
I know that you do. I would tell, you're a strong proponent of this. Like, for those that are unfamiliar, like, how would you define servant leadership?
Yeah. So first thing you got to understand is who you are as an
Mhm.
individual. I go back to identity. So knowing who you are and what you were put here to do, you got to know that. So once you have your identity down, the next thing is understanding the purpose, which is the why. Why do you exist? Why are you here? And then you can really start to act on what it is that you should be doing. I know who I am. I know what I should be doing. Now I go out and I serve. So when you look at a servant leader, ultimately, it's not about you. It's all about making sure people can connect to their purpose and their light, and you're trying to bring that out of them.
Mhm.
I think a lot of times when we get in these positions of when we're on stage or if we have the light on us, we people tend to lose sight of it's not about you, and people might be at your feet and praising you and all that other stuff. By the end of the day, it's all about
Mm,
them. So understanding how to serving comes in so many different forms or fashions, but ultimately it's allowing people to discover their identity, their purpose, and now they go out and carry out that same mission to other people that they come in contact
They
with.
pay it
So
forward.
Yeah.
They pay it
yeah,
forward. Yeah.
that's how I would
Is there
describe it.
somebody? I mean, you mentioned offline that Nelson Mandela, had a huge influence on you. I see Muhammad Ali in the background. Is there somebody,
Yeah.
personally, or even a figure that we would know that exemplifies servant leadership?
I think these are great examples. The individuals that you just said, like Muhammad Ali, Nelson Mandela, they obviously have these principles and these foundational elements that, once again, a lot of people can connect with and relate to. But near and dear to me are the individuals that I was raised by. They led by example. So the work ethic, the structure, I can't emphasize enough as far as the structure. My father being military, my mother, the nurturing. So I saw so much love. I saw I won't even call it pain, but I saw the breakthrough moments. I was able to witness a lot of that grind, that grit. And for me, that set the foundation of what it is that I want to go out and give to the world. And they did a heck of a job as far as this setting that
That's
as a
awesome.
foundation
Are they
for my
still
parents.
living?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yep, both still living. And I'll be remiss if I didn't include my sister. My sister beat up on me. She definitely challenged me. She's 4 years older than me. So I saw the athletic ability and grit and all that stuff from her at an early age, and made me to want to be great at whatever
That's
it is
great.
that I did. So she pushed me too. So she also gets some
That's so
kudos on that.
DJ, I wouldn't be surprised if Free's parents live until they're
Is that
150
right?
years old, because these two, I mean, they're
So
fit,
great.
structured. Like I met them back in 2001, probably August 2001, sometime that, and I knew Free was going to be a beast because like his dad kind of reminded me of my dad, and but probably more like but like more disciplined. My dad was a little bit like thought he could do whatever and eat whatever and whatever, you know what I mean, but similar
He's
mindset of
locked in.
like
That's right. Yeah.
expectations were a high standard, right? An appropriate high standard. Relative to servant leadership,
Yeah.
what's the cost of not being a servant leader, or if you have some other different style? You know what I mean? 'Cause I know like servant leadership, if I recall, and somebody can fact check me on this, I feel like it was coined by a guy. I feel like his last name was Greenleaf. I have to remember his first name, maybe Robert, starts with an R, I think. Greenleaf, like in 1970, right?
Yeah.
But it was kind of like this new thing, because like traditional leadership was more about like power, authority, etc., right? And so we do still have leaders that take that stance. You know what I mean? Whether it's on purpose or on accident, or they're not real conscious about it. Like, what do you see as being the cost of not being a servant leader?
Compromised trust. And when you think of trust, some people are in a position of power that once again has influence, that once again can be a decision maker. But when you have true, authentic, intimate connections and relationships, there lives trust. When you now are operating out of a place of fear, then it's not going to be sustainable for the long run. So the cost that you're speaking to is compromised trust ultimately will lead to the demise of whatever product or company, whatever it may be.
Right.
It's just going to fall.
It kind of seems like at this point, if you're not being a servant leader, if cost is if the cost is trust, then are you even being a leader if you're not being a servant leader? You know what I mean? Now, maybe somebody could argue that. I'm sure that maybe there's some other leadership styles, but like, what do you think?
Well,
DJ?
I was gonna say, like, I'm immediately thinking of like Bobby Knight, right? Like, can a Bobby Knight type of coach or leader, still be effective in this day and age? And that's, I guess that's the question to you, Free. Like, what do you think?
Yeah. The thing is, you still have some individuals who might have been raised old school. I think it's evolved a lot since the Bobby Knight era. So can it be effective for some? but for the masses, I think it falls by the wayside. Trust ultimately is you're going to run through that brick wall because you really believe whatever it is that's coming out of your coach's mouth or your leader's mouth. And in a sense, you got to understand how trust is developed. It comes with time, right? And when you look at time, that's how you spell love in a lot of ways. Like how do you spell love? Time. The amount of time that I'm putting in with this individual or individuals because I see something in you that is special, and I'm trying to bring that out of you once again, that light, purpose, and identity. And when that's compromised, and I can just move on to the next, I'm not putting and investing that time. I'm not looking for a return, or I want a return, but I want it on my time, not on your time. It's compromised trust, and like I said, it's going to show by falling by the wayside.
Yeah, and I think you got to, as a leader, you have to understand who you're leading and what their tolerance is for a certain level of a certain style. You know what I mean? Like we shared a common leader in our life, Jim Reed. Old Jim Reed back at University of Richmond, who spent a bunch of time, has spent how many years coaching, 50 years plus coaching.
He was the head. Was he your head coach? Was he your head coach?
Yeah, he was our head coach at University of Richmond. He had been at Boston College. He had been in Maine. He'd been in a number of places. He ended up leaving during our time there, and we continue to coach in places like Iowa and various other places. But you think you can probably categorize him as kind of authoritarian, discipline, like his way or the highway. A lot of structure. But my personal experience, and not everybody's experience is mine, was I trusted him. If he called me right now and hey, he said, "Hey man, I need you to fly up to Boston. I got something going on." I'd be like, "All right, hey Court, I need to book a flight to Boston. I'll see you Monday." You know what I mean? It wouldn't really be a question, right? Because there was this trust. Because before me, he went. He was a servant leader. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even
His
though
style was,
like kind of his persona was, more kind of like power and so on and so forth. His relationship with me was more of a servant leader, and so so those are people that 20 years later you still even though it's been a long time since I really had to talk to him, he's still somebody that I admire.
It's interesting because if you hear you'll hear like an Isaiah Thomas speak on his relationship with Bobby Knight, and he would answer the question like that. Coach Knight was like that for him. He trusted him. He held him. He liked the fact that he held him accountable and all those things. What's interesting in this day and age, though, I just wonder if a Bobby Knight coach, now maybe it's not servant leadership. I don't know, maybe, but like does that coaching style can it be effective in this day and age? And it's just, and I don't know if the with how the athletes and especially in the college or and professional, with the money that's being poured in, it's like I think they have more leverage. We can debate whether that's right or wrong, whatever it is, but the fact is they have more leverage. So does the coach have to change their style because of that leverage? I don't know.
I would respond with it depends. And I know that's a very broad way of responding. It depends. And when you look at coaching style, I like what Harry said just now. I think from an individual basis, like once again, Coach Reed, same vibe that Harry just said, 100%. Like I trust him. I think he created these great intimate connections at that individual level. And when you're working with a team, you also have to figure out how to bring the individual as one in a united effort. So to your point, I think Bobby Knight could exist in today. I also think he would have to evolve certain things within his coaching style. If we look at the current state of Colorado in Dion, he has this connection of being authentically himself. And we known Dion since Dion was still prime time, by the way. But that's the thing. He's been consistently this personality. And we typically, to the point of what the world wants us to be, so we can fit within this mold, that's what we tend to do as we continue to climb up the ranks. And the dope part about him is he's always been consistently him. If Bobby Knight was to continue. He could still evolve, but I'm saying stay true to his coaching style. I think people who like that coaching style will gravitate towards him from a recruiting standpoint. I want to go there. I want to learn. I think that would be a natural draw for those people who like to be coached like that.
Yeah. Well, you know, I got an example of maybe like, I don't want to say modern day Bobby Knight. And I don't, you know, we only saw what we saw from Bobby Knight, right? The stuff that's like on ESPN, sliding chairs across the, like the floor. But somebody in current day that I kind of look at and raise my eyebrow and wonder, is this working? Is Brian Kelly down at LSU?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Now, and I don't know, like, like the snippets of him engaging with players on the sideline and the way they're looking at him, like, yo, this isn't working. You know what I mean? And he's got this, like, vibe to him that I don't know how it's going to resonate with Gen Z. You know what I mean? And they haven't been winning, and they should be. It's LSU, right? And they were winning before. You know what I mean? And so I find it really interesting because, when you look across the college landscape, whether it be, Prime, or whether it be, my guy, old boy at Oregon, some of these places, like it's a completely different style that's resonating. Lane Kiffin, who comes from an old school background, he's kind of a part of that coaching tree, the Nick Saban coaching tree, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But it's tough, and I think those individuals also, I think, are having trouble in the college game, like understanding and leveraging NIL. I don't think that's a coincidence, right? How in touch are they with this generation? You know what I mean? And the business of what this generation is going through. Because in college sports, recruiting is everything. It used to be just, hey, how can I convince some parents in their home that I'm gonna be a second father, when they're not watching, right? Now it's like, we gotta have business transactions. We gotta understand what people want to do, where they want to go, what's important to them. Mental fitness has got to be important, part of the whole equation. It's a whole different ball game.
Yeah. I mean, and I think too, some people may be listening and thinking, all right, D Free, I want to be a servant leader, but guess what? I need to get results. People need to be held accountable. There needs to be standards. And so how do I balance that? How do I balance being a servant leader, but making sure that I'm creating a culture of accountability and setting a high standard, not lowering that bar?
Going back to knowing what the principles are, I think from a foundational standpoint of whatever the brand company may be built upon, like understanding principles, making sure that we don't ever waver from these principles. Going back to the identity piece, understanding purpose, having that time carved out with this team to pour into them, to understand what makes them tick, what gets them excited. Harry, you said it earlier, the different coaching styles. So if I got 5 different people on the team, some people might want complete structure. Some people want that over-the-top micromanager. Some people like to probably be more free. Like, you got to understand your team. And when I say we send the email out with the expectations and we think everybody reads that email, or we have this meeting that everybody's in and 2 people participate, but you feel like everybody got the message, you literally have to create space with your team individually, and then eventually build that trust over and over and over again, and then the results will come. So you got to serve, and that's the thing. It's in the title. You got to serve to be able to lead.
What's tough is
I was just going to say, just to respond, like I like, as I'm taking notes here, I mean, you keep talking about showing up. You keep talking about trust. You mentioned gratitude, teamwork. I mean, these are the standards that you've set. This is the culture that you're creating as a servant leader. And I think that, like, if I'm on your team, I'm hearing that constantly. I'm seeing you model it and lead by example. I'm going to feel really uncomfortable if I'm not doing those things. And so I think the mixture of not only setting the standard, leading by the example, and then obviously your team's going to see that and they're going to follow suit. So it's really powerful.
Let me piggyback off that, because I'm glad you said that. Light, like, you're going to draw people to your light. You're also going to have people that might be underperformers that don't like that, and therefore they shy away from
We
a lot
call
of that too. So
that
you're not going to be everybody.
seek excellence elsewhere. That's what we call that.
Yeah, I'm trying to tell
Yeah.
you, it happens more often than what people think. Everybody might see, oh man, he's such a lovable, approachable, amazing person. There's a lot of I put this out there. There's a lot of people who don't like me, and I'm okay with that, just for the simple fact that they want me to be a certain way. And since going back to the prime effect, like since I'm not fitting that mold, therefore I'm a disruptor, or that's not right. And you got to understand, you're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. My mom told me early on, she was like, your biggest gift and your biggest issue is you try to make everybody happy. And trust me, son, that's not gonna work out. So be you, be authentically yourself, and understand there's going to be people who just aren't. You're not going to be their cup of tea, and you got to be okay with that.
Yeah. Listen, man, over the last 13 years, I've seen that with my brother. And I think it showed up over the last couple of years, where Russ went on a decade run of a lot of success, a brand and a persona of positivity, and a great marriage to somebody that everybody knows, right? And plays the position of quarterback, where you get a lot of the credit regardless, right? And you get a lot of the blame regardless, right? And because there was a lot of winning, he got a lot of credit, right? And what the ripple effects of that are come in the form of jealousy, and also people waiting in the wings for there to be, for your tire to hit a pothole, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, it's like ravenous, right? I mean, people are like rabid to like find ways to tear people down, if because not everybody, like you said, that light, people can't stand it. People put on them sunglasses because they can't stand, they can't see, they don't want to look directly into the sun, you know what I mean? And what's interesting is being a family member of somebody like that in this world that we're in, like you have to just kind of be, you don't have any defenses, right? If you're gonna do it the right way, because you can go on platforms and be like, yo, like don't, right? It's just like if somebody's bullying your sister back in the day, you weren't gonna play that, right? You were gonna step, you can't really do that on social media, all these different things. So as somebody like my brother's flying really close to the sun, as a family member, you may get burned, right? And have to wear it, right? I think the thing about Russ that I really respected is he's remained authentic in who he's been and who he always has been. And also being willing to have the courage and conviction to actually not clap back. You know what I mean? Not, not kind of like, be petty, not, high road, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Painful and challenging that is, even, because there's plenty of receipts, you know what I mean? There's plenty of receipts to show, but like, you don't necessarily, it takes a lot of maturity and courage to keep those receipts in the wallet. You know what I mean?
Right there with you. It just to share, last night, I mean, we're watching, the game, and it's parallels to both quarterbacks as far as changes over the career and how they can respond to adversity. And literally my wife and I are having a conversation with our children, because they see it too at the tender age of everything you just explained. It's all on media, right? And they can see it, right? And through that, it's dope to show how you can respond to adversity.
Right.
And I love the fact, I mean, both Winston and Russ are great examples of staying true to who they are. Like Winston's a character, like he always, but I mean, he's authentically himself, and that's dope. And Russ just being even keel, like on interviews, and just always, once again, giving the gratitude, showing the appreciation. Like they have always been who they are. And I love that, as far as like just that modeling behavior of what it's like to be great in that space.
And seeing what somebody acts like when things aren't going their way. That's what, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's what, we've seen when Russell, over the last, year or whatever it was, like he was hurt, it comes back, but his attitude, like you said, remained constant. And when they remained the same, he stayed in his faith. He wasn't dogging, the situation, the coach, the other players. He was uplifting. He was acting, and modeling leadership behaviors. And so I think you learn a lot when things aren't going somebody's way and how they act. And yeah, I mean, I think it was a testament for sure.
Yeah, man. So Free, what's next, man? So you've been rocking it at Lifetime, and there's a lot of things that you're kind of up to. Like what's next on the roadmap for you?
I pray about discernment each and every day.
There
she is. What's up, Michelle?
Look what happens when I pray, y'all.
You said praying.
Look, I'm gonna be on. She said, I'm gonna be on my podcast, your podcast, your episode.
Yeah,
what's
I said I pray for discernment, and then boom, she just pops in. Look
at
God.
Look at God. Won't he do it?
I love it.
Won't he will? I love it.
My.
So for those that might be listeing to this, right?
So
if I was just seeing us, Shell just popped in. Michelle Freeman. She actually, for those of you probably heard her on a previous podcast, so you know how badass she is and free, lucky to have found and discernment.
That's right.
a number of years ago. But actually, I was going to ask you about Shell. I mean, like you, obviously, like we mentioned your parents earlier, and like the standard that they've created, not only for you and developing you, and but also like what it is to be a great husband. Probably, if you're a father, what it is going to be a husband. For your mother, what it is to find a great woman. So you found your great woman. You guys are raising 2 beautiful kids. What is it like, trying to kind of translate the standards that were created for both of you guys, that Shell shared the standards that her parents created? What is it like to kind of try to pass that down? And because everything's changed, like the way that, the world that we grew up in is different than the world our kids are growing up in. Like, how are you able to translate that down to them?
I mean, one of the greatest rewards in this life, being able to be a husband and to be able to be a father, to be a leader in this space. Like we were just talking about how we serve all the other individuals outside of this space. It's 10 times more enjoyable. And I'm not being facetious when I say that, because you get so many more reps with your wife and your kids, or your spouse and your kids, for those who are listening.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll start first with Shell. Like marriage in itself is something that is forever evolving, and you're learning. Who I was at 22 is different from who I'm at 30 and then at 40. Like the things that make you tick, the things that you're drawn to, like you're continuing to evolve as a human, and to go through those life cycles with your significant other is huge. And to know that they're ride or die for you is an amazing feeling, right? So just to have that support system is great. We've moved 5 times, within the career of Lifetime, and she's never like questioned it. She's like, all right, I got you, we got this, right? And this is at the fetal stage of Bane being born in Georgia. We moved to Arizona. Harley born in Arizona. We now moved to Minnesota. Like, and she's never like, oh, why are we doing it? Like, she's always been moved to Minnesota
to 4 years. Like, no. Not the dog Minnesota, but I'm just saying. I mean.
No, you dog got Minnesota. Wow. What did Minnesota do to you?
Sorry for our 3 listeners in Minnesota. I apologize.
Coach Krista Ryan, one of Limitless Minds, Coach Krista Ryan. She's Minnesota. Love you, Krista.
Yeah, Minnesota. Hey, Minnesota's a great place to visit, man. I always say that. To live is. I think you got to be born there to really embrace, the cold and winters and all that. But I digress. The kids. Let me get back to the kids. The kids. When you say kind of distill a lot of the foundational principles and elements that we've learned from our parents and trying to teach our kids, I say this all the time. Our kids we'll learn so much more, and our kids will teach us so much more than what we will ever teach them. Let me say that right now. The opportunity to be able to coach my son's football team, the opportunity to be able to be at my daughter's soccer games, and to actually, when I'm coaching, but when I'm able to actually observe and see the aha moments of the things that we talked about come to life, there's no better feeling than that. When you work the steps in the garage 24 million times, and then you see it translate to the field, oh my God, it's one of the best rewarding feelings.
Yeah.
And it's something that they will always remember it, and it can never be taken away, because it's a core memory of we went through this grind together. You failed so many times at this, but look at what happened, what it yielded when it translated. It's a dope feeling, man. And that translates to life outside of sports, because it's like
remind me the ages of your kids.
Bane is 11 and Harley's 8 going on 21. Yo, so much sass, man.
Good luck, bro.
So much
Good
sass.
luck.
Harry probably knows all about it, man.
Yeah.
Like,
I do. Well, and well, you know, DJ's got 3 girls and 2 boys.
So,
oh,
do you?
So
he
knows about.
Oh, you know all about. Yeah, I'm preaching.
And he's got his oldest is 16.
Yeah, man.
Oh yeah, you going through it. I bet you going through it.
Yeah. So I mean, he's got 16 to 6. You know what I mean? 16 to 6. So I mean, I know, but DJ knows.
It's all good,
you know
man.
What I mean?
You know what? Hey, listen, I got to give a shout out to Shea, though. My oldest, my 16-year-old. She works at Mitchell's Ice Cream here in Cleveland, Ohio. Why I'm dogging on Minnesota? Cleveland is almost the same as Minnesota, right? Like it's cold. It's on the wall. It's all in. Like so. But
I was gonna say,
Shea, she works at Mitchell's. She got home Tuesday night, I think it was, and she brought me home some ice cream. I found it in the morning. It was my favorite cherry and chocolate chip ice cream, and I was able to enjoy it when I came home on a lunch break. It's so thoughtful. It's so hey, my 16-year-old, listen, she's got you got ups and downs, but listen, when it comes down to it, she got me the ice cream, bro. She got me the ice cream.
I love that. Y'all scream for ice cream, baby.
So Free, as we shut it down, man, you know, from the marriage of mental fitness, you know, meeting physical fitness, and this whole concept of servant leadership, what would be one or two takeaways for the audience just to kind of think about and kind of put it in their bag for, you know, so for tomorrow that they can just kind of get started on?
Yeah. I mean, for those who are watching, I got WIN on my shirt, and then let's go ahead and create an acronym behind that. And no, I did not create this acronym, but what's important now? And when you break that down, both mentally and physically, whenever you want to go into your next situation, if you're upset, if you're angry, just take a pause and ask yourself the question, what's important now? And from that, you'll start to probably unpack how you might feel 5 minutes from now, 5 hours from now, 5 days from now. And then you'll start to realize, oh man, it's really not that serious, not that deep. So I would say from a mental standpoint, the way you can win daily is always ask yourself that question whenever you're facing adversity, whatever you may be going through, just simply ask yourself that question. What's important now?
Yeah, I love that. I love it. That's about as neutral as you can get right there, man. You know, it really is. That's good stuff. Good stuff.
I love it, man. Well, thanks, Free. We appreciate you being here. For those that are listening and watching, remember, you don't have to be sick to get better.
I love that.